Hey everyone, today we're talking with Jammal Lemy. Jammal is the creative director for March for Our Lives, the youth-led movement after the tragedy of the Parkland shooting in Florida. And he's also doing some pretty amazing stuff. He's an activist, he's an artist, and he's a really great guy. And he's taking some time today to speak with us about how the pandemic is affecting him, how it's affecting activism, art, and some good positivity out of this. So definitely check it out. All right. What's up, everyone? So today we are here with Jammal Lemy, a good friend of ours at CommonAlly, and just someone who's doing amazing things at all times. So it's always good to check in with him. Jammal, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the intro. It's really just trying to stay afloat and stay positive and productive through these times. Trying to do my very little in all this craziness.
Do my very little. I like that. I'm going to use that quote. Um, your little is a lot. For those of you who don't know, Jammal was the creative director for the youth-led movement March for Our Lives. Um, Among all the amazing things he did there, one of the most prominent was, and you could talk about this obviously, but the QR code American flag shirt that pretty much everyone and their brother was wearing, where you would scan the QR code on the shirt and you'd be able to register to vote right there. So why don't we go ahead and dive into your experience with March, how you came to be a part of that movement, and what that meant to you, and then how you were able to use your creativity to create a movement.
Yeah. It was one of those things where, like, I think back on it now, it's just a blur. Just with how much was happening and just post shooting, just like the craziness and that was involved within it all. At that time, I was just designing T-shirts with some friends, kind of, doing things here and there in the creative space around like our town, like our county, Broward County, and just trying to see how I continue my creativity, in my kind of self exploration. And during this time, I went to Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. I graduated in 2016. And this time's like early 2018, late 2017. And I was friends with a young man by the name of Joaquin Oliver, who sadly lost his life in the shooting. And I was friends with him all through high school, but for some reason, just around that time period of those like 3 to 4 months, we just started to get extremely close just by happenstance. And I was already friends with
Do you mean 3 to 4 months before the shooting at Park?
yeah, the 3 to 4 months before the shooting. And I was starting to get really close with what eventually became to be one of the co-founders, Matt Deitch, and our lead political strategist. We were kind of all working in conjunction with, like, I in the middle with, like, kind of working with Joaquin. And Matt at this time was a film director or film student in California, and I wanted to be I want to be a film director. And I'm like, okay, he's in California, like Joaquin's just kind of like, little brother, kind of mentee kind of thing. And it's funny because, like, we kind of got close after he called me to, to ask me to be a reference for his first job at this local ice cream shop. And so we just kind of kept working, and he really believed in my direction with my creativity. So I'm just like, yeah, I have this idea for this t-shirt company and, like, this kind of production kind of thing. And, this is 2017 in South Florida. There really isn't this booming industry for all of this. So kind of felt like I was like, kind of, I just felt like I was just moving. I just wanted to do something, and they kind of believed in that, which is great. And through there, we're close. We have this project called War and Peace that we kind of ideate. And we're like, we're going to bring this to the world. And it was centered around just like war-stricken areas around the world, and we create these t-shirts and raise money and donate them, and help build schools, feed people, etc. And then fast forward, we create this campaign, and we're like, Joaquin's like, how do I help? And obviously this is, he's like a sophomore, he's a junior at this moment, and he's like, doesn't really know where he wants to go. He's like, oh, maybe I want to write or etc. And we're just like, you know what, like, we're like, yo, you're a good enough looking dude, just like, model for us. And we're like, yeah, you can be our poster boy for this. And we set this whole shoot up. We were gonna go down to Miami to shoot with one of Matt's friends, Fritz, and Joaquin, and have them two be the the kind of like poster boys for this project. And we had that planned for the Friday, the 16th, and the shooting happens on the 14th, and it's just like boom, flattens
Oh,
everything, and just kind of like not only changes our community forever, it sent waves across the world, and obviously the waves really start to ripple once the students in the community started to speak out against, not even just against what happened, just the ability that something like that could happen, right?
yeah.
Um, and then Matt and a group of friends, just by different ways and connections, get together and they start mobilizing.
And did that uh, before, I don't want to interrupt you,
No,
but
go ahead, go ahead.
I feel like I remember seeing David come on camera like that day and
Yeah,
almost immediately start a movement. Like,
yeah. I mean,
is that like, and where were you guys all kind of talking at that point? And obviously you heard about the loss of your friends, and I can't even imagine what that was like. But
yeah.
then to mobilize in real time, like I've never seen that before.
I mean, the thing is like, yeah, David mobilized, but he mobilized in a way that I think was really individualistic, where like he knew, like, I mean, he was a student journalist, so he knew like exactly what the talking points were. But at that point, it wasn't like a movement of, it wasn't a collective. It wasn't a movement of people at that time. Like, I think it was more David, like, knowing that he had to speak out against it. But I would say, like, the person that was really mobilizing and bringing people together was Cameron Kasky.
Yeah.
Because he was the person where, like, he's outgoing and, he knew how to connect different people together, just having multiple friend groups. And Matt was Matt knew Cameron from, not only they had a satirical publication at the school called The Cold Beak, similar to the Onion style writing,
Mm.
and they also were in comedy club together, or stand up club, one of those. So they knew each other. And Matt, obviously working on our project, he comes to me after this all, and he's like, "Yo, there's a group of people mobilizing, and it's really turning into something." And like I'm just kind of mourning the loss of like someone I considered like a little brother, a best friend.
Yeah.
And I told them, I was just like, while I can't on the forefront show up at this moment, I'd love, I'm going to lend my services to this movement, and to this action in like the ways I know how, and like through my creativity. So I ended up designing like a shirt or two, and I gave them to Matt and whoever else, and started kind of like connecting with the movement in that way. And Matt went to San Francisco and did a panel with Steve Kerr, and like we designed the shirt. It just said like in bold font, stop all gun violence or end all gun violence. And like it's on the front of like the head newspaper, and in San Francisco, and it's like the reporter writes, oh, blah blah blah, like Matt Deitch, alumni, etc. Has one bold message, right? And it's like that's what our messaging is. For me, I'm like at home, and like I'm still mourning, and before I would know, before I knew I'd go to become a part of this movement, I'm just kind of like tapping in and out in the way like I know how to, just kind of like like I said, lending my
Sure. Sure.
abilities wherever they're needed. So like the movement grows, and they're growing. People are moving. I'm still talking to Matt, still kind of like keeping in contact. And like I think they did the Times cover, and inside the Times article, I don't know how this happened. I guess Matt gave one of the War and Peace shirts to Jackie, one of the co-founders, and like she's like wearing the shirt in the article, and it's like just how it's kind of like it's kind of like a pencil, or I don't know, like it's like a game of telephone where like it's like kind of like hand me downs, like this thing moves, you don't know where it'll end up. It's a good book, like a good book, that's the best comparison.
Yeah.
You're just passing it on from person to person. And it was like my first moment of seeing like how significance of like art and just merch, clothing, how like they're how they're kind of moved throughout friend groups, collective society, etc. And it kind of like started to get my wheels turning. and then we have the march. The march happens. My family was actually, it's actually crazy. My family was planning on being in DC already just to visit my cousin
Wow.
who had a baby. So we planned that trip like months before the shooting happened. And the shooting happened. So my family was coming in a week after. There was a group. Um, it was like real men demand action. It was like this kind of like one of those, like, I mean, when it happened, so many different groups are popping up just to kind of like mirror the movement. And they kind of hit me up, and like I was like working in conjunction with Manuel Oliver at this time, and they came to me up, they're like, hey, can you help us design, etc. So like I designed like a shirt for them, and they're
And
like, how do I pay you?
Manuel, is
That's
that
the
Joaquin?
that's Joaquin Oliver's father.
Yeah. Okay.
This
And
is
he's
around the
got his.
time. Yeah, this is around the time he started Change the Ref, his organization.
Gotcha.
And Change the Ref's just, there's creating dope art in the space, and just, really using um Manuel. I mean, he's an artist, and he's using just the same thing I'm doing, using creativity
Yeah.
to create dope moments and to actually change the world.
I went
Um,
to his first one man show with his new project, and it was absolutely mind blowing. It was the most powerful thing I've ever seen. I was
Amazing.
crying like a little baby for
Yeah,
like
of
30
course.
minutes straight.
It's amazing.
Um but yeah, continue. Sorry,
Of
man.
course. Yeah, so there was they were asking me like, how do we pay you for what what you just made? And I was just like, you don't have to pay me, but if you can, I would love if you got me a one-way ticket to the DC, like 2 days before the march. Because at first I wasn't even going, like, like there was different opportunities to go, but I was just like, I mean, I come from a family like, who's really, involved in, like, not involved, but we're just really in the know about politics. And from a young age, we've just been always kind of indoctrinated with just like making sure that our voices are heard, that we're keeping up. And like, this is like my first moment, like really stepping into the space of like activism. And obviously, like, through my life, I never saw this as activism. I just saw it like as like a form of survival for people.
Hmm.
And like this is a moment where it was like had a word. It had,
When when you say survival, do you mean, because you grew up in a generation of, Columbine. I was out of high school and Columbine happened. That was kind of the first like real big
mhm,
school shooting. Now it's unfortunately just part of the daily vernacular.
yeah.
When you say survival, do you mean that in that context, or are you saying it like, I didn't see this as activism, this is just something we should be doing because there's a problem, we want to find a solution? Like, how are you using that word survival?
I mean, when I say survival, it's more like there have been like especially Black communities just throughout history who had like there was no word for this. It was like, especially take it back to the civil rights movement. Like there's this grand injustice being dealt to Black people on a day in and day out, basis. And like they saw mobilizing and organizing as a method of like liberating themselves, as like, bringing them just kind of outside of an oppressive regime, which was, especially in the South, like laws like Jim Crow and segregation and redlining. And it was like they had to do it because they needed to survive. There was no other way. There was no other
Mm,
option, right?
gotcha.
And obviously, it's kind of developed more in the sense like with now, especially with school shootings, and like it's not it's not really it's not isolated to one group of people. It's something like if you're in a school, right? In a shooter, like the shooter for the most part doesn't, they don't discriminate. Like the bullets fly, they hit anyone, right? Um,
Yeah.
and it's sad that it took Parkland for people to really take this serious. Again, obviously there was different assault weapons bans in the past, but like to really capture the ear of the whole nation. So when I say survival, it's kind of like it's kind of two-sided, where it's like it's been survival for so many, Black and brown folks since the beginning of this country, and like, throughout history. But it's also been like, now it's also like this sense of survival for like young people and just people in general that
Mm,
like, that we had to like they had to do it, right? No, it wouldn't have been
yeah.
taken seriously if the movement didn't develop the way it did. And like, they like the movement demanded space, it demanded attention. And like it, we weren't gonna take a back seat to just the ageist BS that's like, oh no, you're too young, you don't have enough experience. It's like one kind of talking point or one message we had is like, if we're old enough to die in school, we're old enough to actually demand for change to kind of prevent that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, excuse me. And that was really just kind of like what like that I think a lot of the what a lot of the energy was. So I got to DC, and like I said, like that moment really changed my life. It changed my perspective on how I saw just the world, but just kind of how like it really showed me the power of organizing because that was, I mean, there was a million people in Washington D.C. and that wasn't the first time, right?
Yeah.
There was the Million Man March,
Mm-hmm.
and like you saw that like there were that many people who believed in one mission, who brought it upon themselves to travel from far and wide to be there for that moment, and it kind of gave a sense of hope. And like till this day, like I said, it's been the craziest experience. And after that, I knew like within myself, I was like, you know what, like I don't know for how long. Like I didn't want to make it a career, but like, I didn't know if if I was going to be like an activist forever. But I knew at that moment in time that like I wanted to dedicate my energy to like helping this movement and helping people around the country, right? And then
Yeah.
using like my God-given talents to like kind of benefit that. And like I remember the weekend I got back, I called Matt and I was just like, yeah, let's do this. I don't know what my involvement officially is with this, but like I'm here to have that conversation. And I got back and like at first it was like everyone knew me as the guy who like made dope T-shirts. So it was like I kind of came in as like a merch coordinator role, but then like everyone quickly realized there was so much more than that, and it
Mm-hmm.
kind of broadened it where like I wasn't just designing merch, like helping I was helping steer the creative vision for the whole organization. And then from there it was like, oh wow, now you're steering the vision, and like there are other people who like that vision. So then became like being the person who was like handling the creative partnerships and collaborations and helping help like creating the vision for like our brand collaborations with other groups and etc. So
That to me, that I mean, that was one of the most impressive things. I mean, the whole movement is just impressive.
mhm,
But realizing that, in this demographic of younger people and younger people who went through this traumatic experience, who now are a part of the subculture,
mhm,
um, branding and marketing and merchandise is important. And I think, people who aren't in that generation don't understand that and might even see it differently, right? Of just like why would you think about branding with something so important, right? But
yeah,
if you want to reach people and you want to move people, not only do you need to be on the Hill and be talking about legislation, which I know you guys are involved with as well, but it's got to appeal and it's got to speak to people eye to eye. And I think you you had a large role, if not the defining role, in what that was. So
mhm,
I never want that to be minimalized. And I think,
yeah.
the artist in me is like, should people understand the importance of what you did?
Nah, nah,
Um,
definitely, definitely. Nah, man. I mean, things it seemed natural. Obviously, it was hard a lot of times, but for me, it was like something that like my brain just worked like that, and
yeah.
knew that I knew like, and obviously the thing is like a lot of people did as well. Obviously, there were more people who were more like in the know about it and were more like kind of like ready to jump on it and move it forward. But it was just like we knew that like that was the direction we had to move in, and it wasn't forced, like we just
Yeah.
kind of that
And you
way.
could tell it feels like that.
Yeah,
Um, okay. Awesome. I want to transition a little bit,
of course.
only because honestly, I think we need to do another one of these that is just all about March because
Yeah,
it's important and
yeah,
it's huge. I want to kind of bring that to now.
yeah,
We're staring down another beast in this pandemic, and you're holed up in Florida, I'm
yeah,
holed up in California, um, and the rest of the world is as well. How does that affect two things? How does that affect your creative process as someone who is constantly, you know, defining movements and creating things that
yeah,
are impactful, right? Not just dope shit, but like dope shit that's impactful.
yeah.
How does it affect that? And then also, like it or not, you were an activist in a moment that will be
Yeah.
defined in history books, right? So how does this affect activism, in particularly youth activism, while people can't get out there and be with one another?
There's a conversation I've just been having with not only the projects that I'm like working on now and just people I just kind of can like talk to um day to day. It's like, we're not reinventing the wheel here. With a lot of things that we're doing, it's like we know that everything's existing in a digital space. And whether it's IG Live, Zoom conferences, pre-recorded videos, we're confined to our homes. And one thing that I'm saying is, it's like right now is a real moment for like to test how people can build partnerships and coalitions together.
Mm,
um and it's like, because like right now it's the idea of like how do we leverage each other's brands and audiences to actually communicate to more people than we would on a regular basis. And I think for the youth activism space, it's really taken a hit. I know there are a lot of people mobilizing digitally and virtually, but it's like there's only so much you can do when you're not only having to deal with just that's whatever you're organizing for, but you're having to kind of like diffuse just whether it's financial woes or family. Not everyone's being sheltered in the best environment, and you're
yeah.
having to like kind of navigate all of that. And then like for college for high school and college students, it's you know like everyone's pretty frustrated for the most part, with just the idea of like having to do um these Zoom classes and courses, because they're not, I mean, like at this point, I don't think many people are really learning anything. It seems like at this point we're checking boxes just to say we did it and we tried. And like, that's something I'm feeling a lot, just, being in school now. And it's funny, my school is actually, some students have gone together to actually create a strike.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
NYU?
No, the new school.
New school, that's right. Sorry. Hmm.
No doubt, no doubt. And they have their whole list of demands. So I mean, like, people are still organizing, and it's amazing. But what we're seeing is that, like, I think we're noticing how much power physical space and physical presence has on us as people. And it's like, it's the same thing where like it's like when you listen to music in your headphones and you love this album, then seeing it live, right? You can
Yeah.
never have that same feeling you had listening to it again. Like, you may still love the music and what it says, but like hearing it live and being there and experiencing that, it changes you, right? I mean, that's why
Yeah.
we've evolved this way as a species. We need, social. We need, we need to be, social. We need to socialize. We need to be with each other. We need to hug, shake hands, dap up, and that's what I think. Really, that's what we're kind of seeing with it all. And like, I think youth activism. I think obviously there's gonna be a lot of people get creative. I think hear some radio silence for a second as we all try to figure out not only how we organize, but also like how we continue life through this. Because we're not only dealing with
Yeah.
the issue we're trying to solve, but we're like trying to figure out how we continue our lives during this kind of quarantine, shelter in place period.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. It's not any one thing, because we're all kind of dealing with just a lifestyle change in general, let alone adding a movement to that. Um, I'm curious to where I like the idea of, hitting pause, taking a breath,
Hmm.
and how important that is. And I think that is a part of the process to really just figure out and reassess where we are and what needs to happen. But I'm
Yeah.
curious to see what solutions come out of this, because it's hard to say, okay, well, we can't come out and mobilize. We can at least fundraise. But
Yeah.
you can't really
Funds are
fundraise when
drying up.
people are, yeah, not sure about their next paycheck.
Yeah.
Um, so that's not really the likely next step. Um, Maybe it's online volunteerism. Maybe it's,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know, right? Like, and so that's why I was excited to get on the horn with you to kind of see like what people are thinking about and what some of those solutions might be. And
Yeah.
because you take a creative process to get to solutions,
Yeah.
um, I was always curious to hear what you're thinking about that. And
Yeah,
not that you need an answer, because I don't think an answer exists yet.
dude, there's so many things that are happening. I mean, like for me, it's crazy that I'm in this position. Like, I'm thankfully enough, I'm still like working, I'm still, you know, my services are still needed through this time. So that hasn't, has created an opportunity to see where I can, fit in, and obviously working on my own craft as well. But like, everything's just moving to that digital space. Everything's moving to those screens. And it's like, how do you capture people's attention for that moment? And like I said, it's all been through partnership and collaboration. It's all through like, how do we leverage each other's brands, right? How do we
Yeah.
leverage our audiences to help one another? One project I'm working on is like kind of like, how do we partner with different cultural just icons and whatnot? Not even icons, but just influencers, artists, celebrities, etc. Normal people, activists, and how do we like create a moment? And it's really been like everyone's doing that. Like Michelle Obama has her like, I know everyone's kind of like remembers that DJ D Nice moment where he had a million people um on live listening to him spin music. And that was a moment, that was an insane moment
Yep.
through this all. And now her and him have partnered up to create a virtual voting party with her organization, When We All Vote. And it's like, he created that. Without him creating that moment, wouldn't
Yeah.
have opened up a moment for, her to be like, okay, now I know you. I mean, he's probably, I think from when I last looked, he's gained almost like, I think 10 million, if not 10, like a couple million followers on Instagram since then, right? And obviously
So
Michelle
crazy.
Obama being Michelle Obama, it's like, they're leveraging each other's like audiences. It's like, how do we like now come together and like create this, coalition? Like, because I think that's what we're all gonna have to do at one point, because there's only so much growing our audiences can do now, right? Like
Yeah.
we can't be in the physical space of being like, hey, like, we want to expand to the New York market. So, you being in California, you go out to New York, you do market research, and then you, like, once you create your campaign, you create your idea, you throw an event there, right? And you have whoever you're, working with, get access to, you know, whatever pocket of people you're interested in, and you advertise to them, you market to them, and you have them come out. And then now, now you're like kind of moving through this group of people, this friend group, this cultural group. And like, that's often how a lot of brands kind of start to expand their audience, aside from being on the internet, right?
Yeah.
So right now it's using each other's social media, using each other's
Yeah.
emails,
Well,
right? Of
also to your point of like, you can only grow so much. I think it's more about now each person involved has to be more impactful and more intentional
course,
than
of course.
instead of having 10 million people and they're not doing anything, having 1 million who are doing everything. That's huge.
That's
Um,
amazing. It's
yeah.
amazing. And everyone's like, also what have to realize is like, and I'm for sure everyone understands, it's like everyone's on their phone now, right?
I know, dude.
So if you have something that like works in that space, it's now's the moment. Now's the
Yeah.
moment to really get it going.
No, it's true, and it's good to hear about the Michelle Obama initiative too, because it was kind of so disappointing to see. I mean, this is my personal view, but just to see the primary go forward in Wisconsin when
It's
it's like
yeah,
you're in the middle of a
borderline
pandemic,
criminal.
and like politics aside, like we're putting people at risk to get
Yeah,
out there, and I'm the first person to say vote, at all costs, but
yeah,
I
of
don't know
course.
that
Yeah, like I said,
it was avoidable.
it was borderline criminal, to be honest. Like I said, we're realizing at this moment in time that a lot of a lot of what we do and how we live has been in that, just the idea of efficiency and just safety. We're off track
Yeah.
completely.
Do you feel, to that point, I've been kind of preaching this a lot during the series. Do you feel like this was a course correction that the universe kind of handed to us? Like I feel like we needed, again,
Yeah,
to the pause and the breath, like we needed that. I feel
yeah,
like we needed intention again. We
yeah,
needed a course correction, just to find out what we were actually living.
yeah,
Do you
yeah.
feel that?
I mean, like, yeah, if we're gonna take it to that space, I can definitely indulge in that.
Take it.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I really do feel like this, whether it's the universe, whether it's Mother Earth, purging the, all that we've been doing, we're realizing that the way we make money, the way we see money, the way we view productivity, the way we view healthcare, the way we view government, the way we view economic, all of that
Mhm.
post this is going to be completely different. Like,
Yep.
and if you are a person, if someone, whoever you write, wants to revert back to that, wants to continue moving forward, like, you have missed the whole point, right? And
Yep.
obviously, it's like, this didn't happen. I don't think there was some divine, some divine, like, kind of plan to, have a million people be at risk of dying. But at the same time, it was like, they say everything happens for a reason, and it does. And we're at this moment where, we're having to really reevaluate the way we live as human beings on
Yeah.
this planet.
No,
And,
it's well put, man. Yeah.
and it's been crazy where it's like, I'm very curious, like, to see how this looks post all of this. I'm very curious because, like, as someone who's continually creating as an artist, it's like, artists love to, we love to reflect the times. We love to, you know, we love to kind of, like, project on, like, in our art, in our practices, our experiences, what we're seeing, how we're feeling, and what we want, that future to be, like, etc. And right now, it's this moment of, like, I think a lot of artists are looking at it. Obviously, there's a state of, I think, constant anxiety, but I think there is another kind of, like, thought wave of, like, what does this look like for us? And I don't think it's a bad thing at all. It's like, we're now, I think, cleaning the slate on a lot of things,
Yeah.
and it's like, and I think that's going to birth a whole new wave of just art that really impacts the world. And that's exciting for, I think, someone like me who's, like, been doing that
Yeah.
for a little bit. And it's like, and I think a lot of people are doing that, right? A lot of people have been, obviously, I believe in collective consciousness,
Mhm.
and just, like, kind of people just naturally being on the same um, brain thought wave. And, like, I see that, like, this has kind of accelerated that.
Yeah.
And we're gonna see a lot of more business and efforts more centered around actually helping people and helping the planet.
Yeah, no, this is all of that is really well put, man. I think that's perfectly said. The age of, fake cause marketing and greenwashing products and, like,
Yeah.
just paying lip service to things is just so outed now. Like, it was anyways, but now it's just like there's zero room. Like, if
Yeah.
you are genuine and authentic with your mission to really do something powerful, like, you're not going to make it. Like, the world that we're going to walk into, I think, is going to be vastly different.
Mhm.
I just really personally believe that. And I
Mhm.
like what you said about, as artists, excuse me, you, as an artist, it's kind of your job to depict the times. That's important because I think some people miss that and they try to be creative for the sake of being creative, and they try
Yeah.
to, like, do something futuristic or whatever, like, but really, if you can depict the times in your work and after you pass that is seen through that
Mhm.
lens, I think that is really truly the definition of an artist. So I
Yeah.
like that you pull out that distinction, and that is what everyone's doing, and I'm seeing that too, like, across the board.
Mhm.
Yes, there is worry and there's concern and there's obvious, like, unforeseen things that are going to happen, right? And our safety being one of them. But outside of that, and I do separate the two, is like extreme optimism in my mind. Like, I really feel like this is our time as a species. Like,
Mhm.
forget about
Yeah.
nations and races and anything. Like, it's a species of being human,
Yeah.
because we're also seeing, the other thing we're seeing is how connected we are, right?
Yeah.
Whether you want to have a nationalistic view or a globalist view, none of that matters because it is what it is. And now it's being seen, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just think that this is our time.
Yeah.
Um,
You make a great point. You make a great point with that. And I didn't really think of it from that way. Yeah, because I think there is a sense amongst a group of people, there is, like, a sense of, like, I think, extreme optimism, with how this all plays out.
Yeah, and I was talking to Andy Puttycombe from Headspace the other day, and he also brought out the nuance and the we're all in this together thing, and I really was glad he did that, because it's one thing to say that, and we are. I think we're all frozen in this weird time, but we are experiencing this on different levels. So I also don't want to minimize the plight of think about domestic violence, and there's people who are quarantined in homes where it's not healthy and there's abuse. There are people with addiction that now have, triggers are heightened. There's
Mm.
people who lost their jobs or lost loved ones and can't go to funerals. So it's not optimism for everybody. And I don't want to try to paint that picture. It's the reason why I said I kind of separate like the ugliness of what this is
Mhm.
with some of the positives we can take out of it. But I don't want to forget about either of them.
No,
Just
you're
just to
absolutely right.
clarify.
Right. Yeah, of course you got to keep them both in balance of like understanding. Just it's just the same thing about social distancing, right? It's just like I think it's not thinking about yourself; it's thinking about who you can possibly um, infect or come across, and just kind of being um, aware of that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Okay, couple more things, and we can let you go create.
Mhm.
I wanted to see, first of all, I want to talk as much as you can talk anyways about what's next for you.
Yeah, of course.
I know you're up to some exciting stuff, so I want to kind of hear about that.
Mhm.
And then also maybe just some advice on what people can do to stay active,
Yeah.
and how they can continue this wonderful wave of movement,
Mhm.
the Youthquake, I think,
Yeah, of course.
as it's
I
been.
mean, what I'm working on, so I'm working on like my home, right? My home base for my art, my creativity, um, like my business. And like I can kind of be a little open about it now. So it's Maldema Studios. It's this home where I not only bridge just like my feeling, just like my want to do good in this world, but just like my love and passion for love and just love for fashion, right? That sounded weird, passion for fashion.
That's your new tagline, man.
Right,
I'm
right.
gonna subtitle you.
And like just for fashion and film, and it's just idea like it's this word that I came up with that kind of like brings those two things together with like fashion and film. And when I say film, like it's just one media. There's so many ways to express yourself. But like I think those two things go together really well. And obviously it's my our kind of overall mission is broader than that, but it's really kind of using those two pillars as the vehicle. But we're doing because it's like what I learned at March is like we created dope merch and we created dope content, right? And those are two things that no matter as long as people have access to phones, that we're watching things like those are two things that are going to continuously engage people. Um, but the thing is like we don't want to create things just for the sake of creating it. We want it to be very much centered around like how do we create this product, and how do we actually do something good in this world, and keeping like our vision of a better future at the center of our process.
Hmm.
And like that's kind of like always been my ethos, and I want to make sure that that's kind of like in every kind of fiber and being of my company and my brand. And like I really, like I said, like I learned that I'm always working with people, I'm always collaborating, I'm always creating partnerships, and I realized like for me as an individual, I want to create a home not only for myself, but a home for like other dope and creative kind of humans like that as well. And like I said earlier, there's so many people who are like kind of moving to this space and don't necessarily know how to like really make sense of it all.
Hmm.
And like hopefully like Modema serves as like that kind of guiding entity to be like, this isn't the only way to do it, but this is definitely one way to do it. So I've just been really working and having conversations with with people, different brands, individuals, organizations, etc. And just like everyone's like, how do you stay active? I think really, like you said, the one thing is understanding it's okay, not to be active. It's okay to like
Yeah.
be unproductive. Like productivity, like I said earlier, like our idea, the way it's been trained into us, um, it's really false. Like, we're not robots. We're not like these, we're not these beings that just knock out task after task. Like we don't, people are, like you said, dealing with addiction. People are worrying, about where their next meal or
Yeah.
how they're going to pay rent. Um, and people, there are people who are getting sick and having to figure out like if they can go to the hospital. Like, are these tests really free? Like, what if it just isn't? What if it isn't just COVID? What if I'm hooked to a ventilator for the next week of my life, right? And there are people who are worrying about that, losing loved ones, and so like I've just been really stressing to like all like my friends and loved ones that like it's okay to just take a step back, and also practicing that myself. And for those who are healthy, not only physically but mentally as well, and really want to look how to like get involved in this, it's there are like at this moment there are so many I feel like people creating support groups and communities through this all of just ways to check in with one another. And it's also like I always try to say it's like if you do have some type of ability, whether it's film, painting, drawing, fashion, merchandising, like whatever it is, even if it's just like even if it's you or someone who is luckily working right now, right? You have, you're not struggling, you have disposable income. There are a lot of groups who are starting funds to help out people. It's like, there's always a way to buy in moments like moments in crisis, right? And if you do find yourself being someone who wants to kind of like buy in and see how you can help, it's as simple as like taking a step back and realizing like where are my like where are my like spaces of privilege, right? um and it's like, okay, like using that, because I can guarantee you there are, if you want to do it, it already exists, and it exists at a scale where you're actually kind of helping a lot of people.
That's huge.
um
No, that's great, man. I really like that advice. And that's I think we're all capable of that to some extent, but like taking that step back, realizing where's my skill set, where's my wallet, where's the thing I can bring to the table, and
mhm.
then heighten that wherever possible. I think that's great advice.
Yeah.
Um it's cool to hear about Modema, man. I can't wait to see what comes out of that.
Yeah,
I'm
def-
assuming it's too early to let people check anything out with that yet, or
no, it's very early. We're
yeah.
gonna have a lot of our like just like socials and websites are gonna go live within the next coming week or so. We've been like obviously through this model, we've been kind of like ramping up because like just kind of like out of nowhere, some just things started to align, and we're kind of moving at a faster speed at this moment. But
Good.
definitely soon, within the next week or so, we'll have our socials, website, etc. going, and we'll be able to like really start to kind of like take in the people we're looking for, to really kind of like look towards this vision.
That's great, dude. All right. Well, where can people find you on social
Yeah, of
right now?
course. I'm Jammal Lemy on all social platforms. It's JammalLemy. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I don't advise Facebook. I'll just throw it out there. But yeah, I'm just really doing my best to kind of stay connected with everyone. And my friend Ramon and I, who Ramon's not has been under the weather the past couple days. We every other day try to get on Instagram. We do a live. We kind of just talk about just what is going on in life, take questions, give people ways to stay fit, to stay mentally fit through this all, and just
Love it.
use it as like a virtual check-in for just people who kind of don't have something to do at that moment.
Cool. Well, we'll be checking in for sure, man. I recommend everybody check out Jammal. Incredible guy, incredible artist, and really thankful for having you today, man. Thanks for talking with us.
Dude, thank you for creating this opportunity and creating this space. I know you asked me, but you do have a grasp on like how to actually stay productive and to really try to help people during this time. So I thank you for creating this space.
Thanks, man. Means a lot, buddy.
No doubt, no doubt.